Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning and welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown, our weekly discussion on issues surrounding our lives here in the greater Joplin area, and maybe especially where it impacts us as people of faith. Maybe some of those things to think about as we talk to each other. This morning, my guest is going to be Aaron Brown, who is a regular guest of ours. It's always good having you on.
Good to be here.
You're very popular, so whenever I have you on, people tell me that they enjoy it. So that's one of the reasons that you're back. It's good.
It's fun.
This morning, we're going to be talking a little bit about the challenge of preaching and what that's all about. In some ways, it's one of the things that we've all got in common, and we probably all have some, at least in our Christian denominations, some kind of a celebration of the Word. And I know that's true in our Jewish and our Muslim brothers and sisters as well. So we are going to talk about what that's all about, the challenge of preaching, right after we come back after this Mercy Minute. Thanks for joining us this morning, and don't go away.
I thought about bariatric surgery because the struggles I've had with my weight all my life. Every time I tried a new fad diet or a new diet, it seems I always put back more weight on than I lost. And then of course that leads to a very downward cycle of being very hard on yourself, being very depressed. It's been amazing. I mean, it's been shocking. I feel like a whole new person, inside and out. It's just not with the surgery, but also with the care team and everything involved. The dietitian, the therapy, and everything has been, I feel reborn. I'm able to do things that I want to do. I'm not held back by my weight. I'm not held back by my depression. I'm not held back by the emotional weight and physical weight I was carrying around. I feel free. I feel like I can do anything.
Well, welcome back. This is Faith in Our Hometown. This morning, my guest is Aaron Brown from St. Paul's United Methodist Church. And Aaron, we're going to talk about something that I think is a great joy for us and always a great challenge for us, and that is the joy and the challenge of preaching.
Yeah.
I will tell you that one of my wise guests once said to me that he thought that I had a lot of words that were waiting to just get out. And I'm going to say that the rumors are true. If the rumors are true about you, you're the same way.
I don't know.
By the way, Aaron was that guest that gave me that.
You
great
do have
comment.
a lot of words in there, Jay. They're
I'm
just
telling you,
clawing their way out.
They do.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Spirit's involved with some of them. Okay.
I know it.
But it's a very common thing in so many of our religious denominations. Whether or not we're talking about our friends at Unity, whether we're talking about Friday, for our Muslim brothers and sisters, usually some kind of an instruction, some kind of let's latch on to what we've got in terms of scriptures, whatever they happen to be, and let's see what those scriptures say to us now. So we all, that seems to be the common denominator, because we all don't do all those things. We don't do everything else we do every week, but that's one of the things that's pretty common for all of us. Yeah. So in terms of that, you preach every week?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, and I do.
Well, I'm a little scared about talking about this because it's like once you know how the hot dogs are made, we're telling people how the hot dogs are made here, Jay.
Well, as far as
they're not going to want to eat the hot dogs anymore.
Oh no, I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I think that our people are hungry for. I think they're hungry for the Word. I think they're hungry for new ways to look at it. I think they're hungry for trying to figure out how to apply it to their lives. And I think the reason why I'm so comfortable talking about it all the time is because, I train our seminarians. And we talk about preaching all the time. Because one of the things, every time Catholics are surveyed, and this is probably true about Methodists and true about other Christian denominations, every time they're surveyed, people will say that there's one of those things that they really, really expect on a Sunday, or when they talk about the satisfaction in their parish, they will talk about the quality of the preaching. So that's a hunger. They want it if they don't have it. And if they do have it, it's one of the reasons why they keep showing up is because they're being fed.
Right. Well, and I think that sense of being fed comes from the connection between the speaker and the listener and God, that there's this beautiful interplay between the
Right.
three. And and you've had this happen before, where I work on a message that I'm presenting on a Sunday, and somebody will come up to me afterwards or weeks later and say, "Thank you for saying that," and quote back to me something from the message that I never said.
Exactly.
And and sometimes I just look at that and think, what a gift God gave them in that moment. Sometimes I feel like, okay, you misheard me completely, and I need to correct that. But
I try to resist that.
Yeah, I do too. But I think that there is that interplay between God and the speaker and the listener that in many ways is kind of a mystery to me, but something that I recognize if it's going to be preaching rather than a lecture,
right.
There's a difference that preaching has that element of the Spirit in it that is somehow unleashed and somehow passed along.
Yeah, I always tell my guys, that's why I see it as always, I know I'm the only one, quote, talking during that time, but it's a dialogue.
Oh, definitely.
It's not if it's a monologue, then I've missed the complete point of what it was that I've been trying to do all week long.
Right. Well, I actually video record the message that I'm going to preach on Sunday on Thursday because we have a video venue. So I actually preach to an empty room. And it's really the same manuscript that I use in that, but it is such a different feel because the listener is not there. I mean, there are a couple people there listening, but it's so different than speaking to a room of people who are there anticipating that interplay, whether they know it or not, that interplay between God and the speaker and the listener and how that circulates around.
Yeah, and see, and I would, it just kind of gives me the. It just kind of gives me the willies thinking about, even, I know that sometimes our crowds are so large that we can't do it any other way. But to me, that would be I hope we never get there.
Mm-hmm.
I hope we never get to that point where we lose that live interaction. I don't want it to be. Sometimes our teenagers and younger folks are saying, "Father, we need to do something to get this jazzed up a little bit. And we need to bring in TVs and all that kind of stuff." And I was like, and I could see there were times when I would love to be able to use an application from a movie or something I've seen or a piece of art or some of those things. I would love to do that sometimes. But I don't want, I'm a communications major, okay, so even from college, and I don't want it to become a hot medium. I don't want it to become because you start getting the electronics in there too much, and you lose the human part of the essence of the communication, which I think we really are going to do. So, God love you, brother. If you can preach to I would just find that such a challenge.
But you and I are in different places there because, we do use quite a bit of electronic or we use a lot of media in our worship services in general. And then within my message, I'll use media as well. One example is, so I'm actually doing a series right now on Nehemiah, one of the Old Testament characters who was an ordinary guy who was called to do an extraordinary thing, and he did it, and how did he do that, and what did he face? And one of the things that we see in Nehemiah, I was talking about this a couple Sundays ago, is that he sat down to cry. What was the first thing he did when God called him to go and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem after the city had been destroyed 140 years? So he sat down to cry, then he knelt down to pray, and then he stood up to act. And I also talked about how one of the things we see Nehemiah doing was planning. And so as part of an illustration on that, I used a video clip. Have you seen this video clip of the whale they blew up in Oregon in 1970?
Oh,
you need to see it. So, but I just use that as a media illustration of what happens when we fail to plan. And I think
now I've got the image in my mind.
Yes, you have the image of giant chunks of whale blubber falling down out of the sky, and you don't need to watch that if you haven't seen it. Google it, exploding whale, and. But I think that to me is a way to, the illustration within any kind of preaching moment adds that light. That's one of some of the teaching instructors that I had say, an illustration offers light into whatever it is you're talking about. So I use things like that. I think it was last Sunday, there's a local lady who's called the Cookie Lady. Her name's Bonnie Grace, and there was a video piece on her that the Joplin Globe had done that she makes cookies and sends them to troops in Afghanistan. And she sends 10 dozen cookies in a box to 14 soldiers every other week. 1,440 cookies every other week. So, talking about what does it look like for someone to go beyond themselves, to find a way to serve. And so I just think that the media like that can tell a story visually that I can't create
I think you just
as
did
well
a fine
with
job
words.
right now.
But to actually see Bonnie Grace and to see her cookies and is much better than I could tell it. So I think that to me that way to illustrate is to use the best resources that I can find in storytelling to convey these biblical truths that are powerful and always will be.
And I go about it similarly, but I just don't. I don't want a device between me and the people. And I'm not saying that yours is between, but I'm just saying that's the way it would feel more to me in terms of doing some of that. But interesting. I mean, it's just like because there have been times when I would, when I've said to people, later go home and like somebody, go watch this or go Google it or something. I don't mind, in that, but it's like being to me in a conversation with somebody when, and this happens when I'm sometimes with my college students all the time, is everybody will start with the phones. The minute you start with the phone, then you suddenly got this distraction going this way, you get this distraction going this way. And I think we're losing the art of being able to do this in a way that we should be more comfortable with. But I think that we are, as a people, just collectively, we're becoming less comfortable with this because we're so used to being wired a different way. Yeah. And I mean, even the social scientists are telling us that it is affecting the way our brains are wired.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt about that. And I think that people are hungry in a media-rich world. People are hungry for simple communication, face to face, or a real live person. I think there's a new hunger for that in a way. I don't know if we're completely at a saturation point with our phones and electronic devices, but maybe we're close. Yeah,
I am, but I get saturated a little bit better than most people.
But you talk about things like media getting in the way. I remember hearing that. In the Middle Ages and Dark Ages, some of the brightest thing in people's life was a stained glass window. When they would walk into a church that had stained glass window, the colors were the richest, most vibrant colors that they could see anytime, any place, and that those stained glass windows told a story. We actually have some in one of our buildings. We have some stained glass windows, and they tell the story of the scriptures. But today, I think our stained glass window is the screen, the media screen, where it can offer some of the most vibrant pictures that stir people's minds and their souls.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things. Maybe part of the deal is that I've never had that medium to work with in that context. And that may be part of the reason why, maybe my imagination is a little stunted in this regard, and it's possible.
I doubt it. Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying it's possible. I mean, it is a challenge. It's something to think about in that regard. Because again, I like to use media. I've done a lot of media education, use a lot of things in terms of those images and things, but try to do it in a different way. At any rate, we'll be right back after a quick break. This is Faith in Our Hometown. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Well, welcome back after a quick break. I'm here with Aaron Brown this morning talking about the challenge of preaching. And yeah, I got to say this. I really actually enjoy the fact that we may be disagreeing on something, which is a good thing. I think it makes better TV myself. I think it makes better TV myself. in terms of that. And again, just different approaches, and different, playing to different strengths perhaps. So let's show them how we make sausage just a little bit, or the hot dogs just a little. So when do you start your process of preaching and the challenge that goes with that?
I work with a team, so I've got a team of people, and we begin to prayerfully kind of discern where we want to go over the next few months, even into the next 6-9 months at a time, and we answer that question prayerfully and to say, as a teaching community, we really think that followers of Jesus, there are certain things that need to happen during the course of the year. People need pastoral care. We're wounded. All of us are walking wounded, and so how do we address some of the hurts that we have when we have relationship issues, and we have parenting issues, we have financial issues, we have spiritual issues that are going on. So we look at that as a big piece. We do a lot of answering of big questions too. So what are the questions that we hear, and we as a team, when we're talking about this, that we hear that people are wondering about? So we'll begin to plan a series on things like half truths. And I think we actually talked about those.
One time. Yeah, sure.
Some of those half truths that we kind of half believe and think that they're true. And
so you guys get together as a team, and you guys start kind of plotting out where you want to go with like a series or those kinds of things. So you come up with a topic, or you'll come up with something, and then you guys will kind of construct around that.
Right.
So you don't use any kind of like a common lectionary or any of those kinds of things.
And I was taught to use the common lectionary,
Right, sure.
which is for listeners of the cycle, a 3-year cycle of scriptures that lead you through the major themes of the Bible: Old Testament, New Testament, Psalms, and
Epistles. And again, just Gospel. Real briefly. It gives you a chance to do a semi-continuous reading of the 3 synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then you use the Gospel of John at other times during the year, certain sections during the summer, Christmas, Easter, certain things like that. But you go through a semi-continuous reading of those other Gospels so that you kind of get them in their entirety throughout the year. Now we don't obviously, where there's still sections. It's not that we don't read the whole thing, but we get those sections that lead from one to the other, and we use that. The Episcopal Church uses it. A lot of the Christian churches really use it.
United Methodist
often use it, right? And now for me, what's interesting about that is that I am forced to look at the particular message that particular gospel writer was trying to do, and I have to do it anew and afresh every 3 years because I've changed a lot during those 3 years. So every time I come back to it, I'm always amazed at how some of that will change. Now I will sit with my parish council and still get some of those other ideas, but we don't plan like the series or those kinds of things about doing some of those kinds of things. Although sometimes it'd be tempting. I mean, it'd be tempting to do something like that, and we could. We are given some instruction. We are not able to change the readings. We still got to use the readings, but we are not limited to just preaching
on those readings.
Just on the readings. We could preach about the season. We could preach about the rest of the liturgy. We could preach about other things. But we're still told that the gospel really has primacy of place in our preaching, and so that we need to make sure that we're not ignoring it all the time. Because really, 60 years ago, priests never. We call a lesson or whatever, or a sermon on the readings a homily. But anything that might be something else on a different topic or what we call a sermon. Okay, and it's a semantic, technicality. Okay, but we were always reminded, and especially when I talk to the old timers will just talk about how much, in their estimation, in the last 60 years, the preaching has in some ways gotten better because you no longer get the instructions from the Catholic Synod that say for the next 7 weeks you should do the sacraments. Or whatever. And instead of that, they just say that they believe that the preaching has been richer. Now, there are a few things that sometimes might fall through the cracks just in terms of that. So every once in a while, you gotta, pull something else in or whatever. But I usually try to let my parish council and what's going on in the life of the parish and whatever then inform what's going to happen to that. When I was actually first preaching, when I was first a pastor, I moved to Piedmont, Missouri. and I'm sitting at a table with, all the other ministers of the Ministerial Alliance. They said, Thanksgiving service coming up, Jay. You're the new guy, so you're going to preach.
The same thing happened.
And they said, because always the new guy has to preach, okay? So I go to do it, and I said, well, so, okay, what are my readings? And they looked at me and they said, well, you pick the readings. And I was like, I pick the readings? Yeah. I pick the readings? Oh my gosh. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't pick them for weddings and funerals and some of those things, specifics, but that was so foreign to me because I'm so used to having the word handed to me and said, okay, now figure out what God's going to do with you this week on this. Yeah. And then I have to go through that process a different way. Again, nothing wrong with either process. At times I wish I could do that, but
I think the challenge is just being true to that, and in whatever way you do it. One of the things that I was told, be careful about hobby preaching. that everything becomes related to whatever hobby you're in, or comes back to that. So I always try to push myself out of that. But again, I'm glad I have a team of people that I work with to help that happen. But one thing I try to do is I prepare, and I kind of do most of my preparation on a Tuesday and then finalize it on a Thursday. So I kind of have 2 days where I'm really bringing it all together. But I always try to picture about 10 or 12 people that are out there listening, and specific people, not by name, but by their nature or by their background. There's somebody out there who is wounded some way. There's somebody out there who's a skeptic. There's somebody out there who has heard everything that a pastor could possibly ever tell them. They've been listening for 30 years.
Or 90.
There's somebody who's very distracted right now because of something else that's going on. There's somebody who is super joyful about stuff. So I try and as I write, as I prepare, think, now I know that all 12 of those people represent a whole lot more. How am I bringing the good news of Jesus Christ to them in a way that is relevant? And then, I always try to answer the so what question. So no matter what I've talked about at any given time, so what? What am I taking home? And so I try to be really clear about that, and just simply, somehow, some way, say, here's the point, and here's how I hope we walk out of here different than we walked in, with this truth in our minds and this behavior to live out.
There's 2 more things that I always have to add for us because of the way we go about our prayer on a Sunday. First of all, we can't ever celebrate on a Sunday Mass the Word and the Sacrament. We can't split them up. We can't do them differently. They always have to be connected. And the one is supposed to lead into the other, and the homily is actually the bridge in between the two. So the deal for us is we've always got to take the Word and have it lead us into the Eucharist. Okay. The other thing is that I always can never lose sight of for myself is, and I teasingly say this to the folks I preach to all the time, it's just like, you all think I prepare these homilies for you. No. Really what I'm doing is I'm working out my own stuff, and I'm really preaching to myself.
Now you're really telling how the hot dogs are
I'm really telling you how, exactly. I'm preaching to myself because I always have to ask the other question. Now, not that I don't listen to those other things or think about those other voices or all those experiences that I've dealt with people during the week, and I'll mention the readings to people throughout the week and see what their reactions are and all those things. But for me, it's always a matter of, what does God need me to hear in this? What does God need me to change about my own life? What needs to be transformed through this Word in my own life first? And if I am transparent enough with that process, now not like my preaching is really supposed to be all about me, okay? Because it's all about us.
But you're a human being just like your hearers are a human being, and what resonates with you probably resonates with them.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I rarely do I ever say, you need to do this or you need to do that, because for me, it's always the open-ended, what do we need to do from this?
Right.
How is this affecting us? How is this supposed to change us? And then I share with them a little bit about how that's working in me, so that hopefully they can make the application and go do the same thing for themselves.